It's been 6 months since I started working the night shift at Walmart. 6 months of following rules that make no sense. 6 months of seeing things that shouldn't exist. 6 months of wondering if I'll make it to morning. I didn't want this job. I needed it. My rent was 2 months overdue, and my landlord's patience had worn thinner than the walls of my crappy apartment. The now hiring sign in the Walmart window seemed like divine intervention. Third shift stalker, $14.50 an hour. Benefits after 90 days. I practically ran to the customer service desk. The hiring process was suspiciously quick. A 5-minute interview with a store manager named Dave, who barely looked at my application before saying, "You'll do fine. Start tomorrow night, 10 p.m. He slid a folded piece of paper across the desk. "Read this at home. Memorize it. Follow it exactly." I didn't read it until I got home that night. I figured it would be standard employee guidelines, dress code, break policies, how to call in sick. I was wrong. The paper contained a list of rules, typed in plain black text. No Walmart logo, no employee handbook formatting. Just a list numbered 1 through 13. Night shift rules. Follow exactly. Rule 1. Clock in between 9:50 p.m. and 9:59 p.m. Never at 10 p.m. exactly. Rule 2. Bring your own flashlight. Store-issued ones are unreliable. Rule 3. Always work in pairs after midnight, except in the garden center. Never enter the garden center with another person. Rule 4. If the PA system plays music between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., proceed immediately to the break room until it stops. Do not hum along. Rule 5. Avoid eye contact with anyone wearing a blue vest without a name tag. Rule 6. If you see a customer after 1 a.m., notify a manager immediately. Do not approach them yourself. Rule 7. Some shelves may appear to extend beyond what seems physically possible. Stock only what you can reach without stepping into the shelf. Rule 8. The employee restroom near electronics is off limits between 3:13 a.m. and 3:27 a.m. Rule 9. If you hear someone calling your name from the storage area, ignore it unless you can see the speaker's face. Rule 10. Should you encounter shopping carts arranged in a circle, do not disturb them and notify management. Rule 11. The frozen food section doors sometimes show reflections that don't match the room. Ignore these and continue working. Rule 12. If the lights flicker 3 times in quick succession, stand completely still until they stabilize. Rule 13. Never, under any circumstances, acknowledge the night janitor who whistles. He is not an employee. I laughed when I finished reading. This had to be a prank they played on new hires, some weird initiation ritual. But I needed the job, so I decided to play along. My first night seemed normal enough. I clocked in at 9:55 p.m., remembering rule number 1 without really thinking about it. Dave introduced me to Miguel, who would be training me. "You read the rules?" Miguel asked while showing me how to use the pricing gun. "Yeah," I chuckled. Pretty funny stuff. Miguel's expression didn't change. "Follow them. All of them." "It's just a joke, right? To mess with the new guy?" Miguel stopped what he was doing and looked at me with an intensity that made me take a step back. "Listen carefully. I don't care if you believe me now. You will by the end of the week. Those rules, they keep you alive. Break one, even by accident, and..." He shook his head. "Just don't." I wanted to press him for details, but a manager called him away to help with a pallet of laundry detergent. The rest of my first shift was uneventful. I stocked shelves, broke down boxes, and tried to ignore the occasional weird noise from the ceiling. It wasn't until my third night that I witnessed something that made me start taking the rules seriously. I was working in the cereal aisle around 1:30 a.m. when I heard the distinct sound of shopping cart wheels. Looking up, I saw an elderly woman slowly pushing a cart near the end of my aisle. She wore a nightgown beneath a heavy winter coat, despite it being August. Rule number 6 flashed in my mind. If you see a customer after 1 a.m., notify a manager immediately. Do not approach them yourself. I reached for my walkie-talkie, but before I could call for a manager, Miguel appeared beside me. "Ma'am, I'm afraid the store is closed," he called out, his voice steady but tight. The woman turned toward us and my blood froze. Her eyes were completely black, like empty sockets filled with oil. Her mouth stretched into a smile that was far too wide for her face. "I just need to pick up a few things," she said, her voice overlapping with itself, as if multiple people were speaking in imperfect unison. "Could you help me reach the top shelf?" Miguel's hand clamped down on my arm as I instinctively took a step forward. "We're not authorized to help after hours," he said firmly. "A manager will be with you shortly." The woman's smile stretched even wider, revealing rows of teeth like jagged glass. Such a shame. I only needed a little help. A sharp static burst from the overhead PA system, and the woman's head snapped up. She made a hissing sound, then pushed her cart around the corner and out of sight. Dave appeared moments later, looking grim. "You saw her?" "What the hell was that?" I whispered, my heart still pounding. "Someone who doesn't follow the rules," Dave said cryptically. "Get back to work. Stay with Miguel until your shift ends." After that night, I memorized every rule and followed them religiously. Most shifts passed without incident if you were careful, but occasionally things happened that reminded me why the rules existed. Like the night I needed to use the bathroom at 3:12 a.m. I remembered rule number 8 just in time. The employee restroom near electronics is off limits between 3:13 a.m. and 3:27 a.m. I rushed to finish before the forbidden time. As I washed my hands, I checked my phone. 3:12 a.m. I had 1 minute to get out. I dried my hands and reached for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Something was holding it shut from the other side. "Hello?" I called out, trying to keep panic from my voice. "I need to get out." No response, but I could hear breathing, heavy, wet breathing, like someone with fluid in their lungs. My phone showed 3:13 a.m. The lights flickered, then dimmed to a sickly yellow glow. The breathing got louder. Something scraped against the door, like long fingernails dragging across the metal. I backed into the far corner, trying not to make a sound. The temperature dropped so quickly, I could see my breath. The breathing on the other side of the door became rhythmic, almost like it was sniffing, searching. For 14 excruciating minutes, I stood frozen in that corner. The thing outside occasionally banged on the door hard enough to dent the metal, but it couldn't get in. At exactly 3:27 a.m., the lights returned to normal, and the temperature rose. The door swung open on its own, revealing an empty hallway. Dave was waiting outside, looking at his watch. "You're lucky," he said quietly. "Next time, check the time before you go." I nodded, unable to speak through my chattering teeth. What? What happens if someone's in there during those times? I finally managed to ask. Dave's expression darkened. "We lost 3 stalkers that way my first year as manager. We don't discuss it." Weeks passed. I learned to navigate the strange reality of night shifts at Walmart. I discovered what happened if you violated other rules, mostly through the misfortune of new hires who didn't take them seriously. A guy named Chris didn't believe in bringing his own flashlight, rule number 2. The store issued one he used went dark while he was checking inventory in the back room. We found him the next morning, huddled in a corner, his hair turned completely white. He couldn't speak, couldn't tell us what he'd seen. He just kept drawing the same symbol over and over on any surface he could find. He never returned to work. Then there was Amber, who thought the music on the PA system at 3 a.m. sounded nice and hummed along, breaking rule number 4. The melody seemed to seep into her, changing her. She became obsessed with the tune, humming it constantly, unable to finish sentences without breaking into that eerie melody. She walked into the garden center during daylight hours a week later and vanished. The security cameras showed her stepping behind a display of seasonal plants, but she never emerged on the other side. I became something of an enforcer of the rules, warning new hires, making sure my coworkers stayed safe. We looked out for each other. We had to. Last week, I broke a rule myself, not intentionally. It was an accident, a moment of forgetfulness that may cost me everything. I was working late, restocking the soup aisle, when the lights flickered 3 times in rapid succession. Rule number 12, if the lights flicker 3 times in quick succession, stand completely still until they stabilize. I remembered the rule, but I was in the middle of placing a can on the shelf, and my body's momentum carried the motion forward. The can clinked against the shelf as the lights stabilized. It was just a small movement. Barely anything. But rules are rules for a reason. For a moment, nothing happened. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I'd gotten lucky. Then I noticed the soup cans began to vibrate, all of them up and down the aisle, rattling against each other with increasing intensity. The sound of metal striking metal grew to a deafening crescendo, then stopped abruptly. In the sudden silence, I heard a soft thud behind me. I turned to see a single can of chicken noodle soup rolling slowly across the floor, coming to rest at my feet. I didn't remember that can falling, and it wasn't one of ours. The label was slightly wrong, the colors inverted, the text in a font we didn't carry. Dave found me staring at it and immediately dragged me away. "Don't touch it," he hissed. "Don't even look at it. Go home now. Call in sick tomorrow." "What? Why? It's just a soup can." His expression was deadly serious. "It's marked you. Breaking that rule. It opens a door just for a second. Something noticed you. Go home. Check your apartment thoroughly before entering. Look for anything out of place. Anything that wasn't there before." "What should I do if I find something?" He hesitated. "Run. Leave everything behind. Start over somewhere else." I did as he said. I searched my apartment carefully before entering. Nothing seemed amiss. For 3 days, I called in sick, jumping at shadows, sleeping with the lights on. Nothing happened. I began to think Dave had overreacted. But this morning, I found it. A can of chicken noodle soup sitting in the middle of my coffee table. The colors on the label inverted. The text in that wrong font. I didn't put it there. I live alone and my doors were locked. As I stare at it now, I can swear the can occasionally vibrates, just slightly, like something inside is trying to get out. Sometimes, when the room is completely quiet, I can hear a faint whisper coming from inside the metal cylinder. It knows my name. I'm writing this as a warning. If you ever work the night shift at Walmart or any retail store with strange rules, follow them exactly. No matter how silly they seem. No matter how small the infraction might appear. Because the rules aren't there to control you. They're there to protect you. I'm leaving town tonight. I don't know if it will help, but I have to try. If I don't update this post in a week, well, let's just say I've been applying for day jobs only. And if you ever see a can of soup with an inverted label, for God's sake, don't touch it. Don't even look at it directly. It might notice you too. The employee entrance swallowed me into the store's back hallway, a narrow corridor with scuffed linoleum floors and walls adorned with corporate motivational posters. "Teamwork makes the dream work," claimed one, featuring smiling employees that looked nothing like the hollow-eyed Diane who'd greeted me outside. My watch read 9:49 p.m. Perfect timing. I headed to the time clock, a battered machine mounted on the wall near the break room. Diane was already there, punching in her employee number. 9:51, she announced to no one in particular, then stepped aside from me. I approached the time clock, typed in the employee ID Lloyd had given me, and pressed enter. The digital display flickered, then showed 9:52 p.m. A sense of relief washed over me, though I couldn't explain why following rule number 1 felt so important. "Good," Diane nodded. "You'll be with me tonight. Training." The break room door swung open, and a heavyset man with thinning hair and the manager's vest approached us. The name tag on his blue vest read, Lloyd. "Marcus," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "I see you've met Diane. She'll show you the ropes tonight." His eyes darted to the time clock. "Good. You remembered Rule 1. "About those rules," I started, but Lloyd raised his hand, cutting me off. "Just follow them. Questions come later, if at all." He checked his watch. "It's almost 10. The others will be in soon. Diane, start him in dry goods. Aisle 7 through 12 inches. With that, he walked away, disappearing through a door marked Management Only. "Come on," Diane said, leading me through the store. The regular closing shift employees were filtering out as we made our way to the sales floor. The store wasn't officially closed yet. It wouldn't be until 11 p.m., but the customer count was sparse. "So," I ventured, "how long have you worked nights here?" 4 years, 2 months, she answered without hesitation. Before me, they went through 6 night stalkers in 3 months. High turnover? Diane's laugh was dry and humorless. You could say that. We reached a line of pallets stacked with boxes. The store was oddly quiet now, the usual daytime Walmart bustle replaced with an eerie calm interrupted only by the persistent hum of fluorescent lights. "All right," Diane said, handing me a box cutter. "We'll start with these cereal boxes. Simple enough." I took the cutter, noticing how Diane's left hand was missing the pinky finger. She caught me staring and flexed the maimed hand. "Rule 7, she said quietly. "Learn that one the hard way." Before I could ask what she meant, a voice crackled over the PA system. "Attention Walmart shoppers. The time is now 11 p.m. and our store is closed. Please bring final purchases to the front registers." "Now it begins," Diane muttered. For the next hour, we worked methodically, unpacking boxes and stocking shelves. Diane showed me how to use the pricing gun, how to break down cardboard, where to stash empty pallets. Basic retail stuff, almost normal. At midnight, the overhead lights dimmed slightly, transitioning to what I assumed was the store's night mode. The remaining staff had dwindled to just the night crew, 8 of us in total, scattered throughout the massive store. "So, when do the weird things start happening?" I asked, jokingly, as I shelved a row of cereal boxes. Diane didn't smile. "They already have. You just haven't noticed yet." I was about to ask what she meant when I realized the cereal aisle seemed longer than it had been a minute ago. I looked down the row of shelving and the far end seemed to stretch beyond what was physically possible, given the store's layout. "Diane," I whispered, "is the store bigger than it was before?" She glanced up at the aisle, then quickly returned to stocking. "Rule 7, she said under her breath. "Some shelves may appear to extend beyond what seems physically possible. Stock only what you can reach without stepping into the shelf." The distant end of the aisle seemed to pulse, the space warping slightly like heat rising from asphalt. A box of Lucky Charms fell from my hands, clattering to the floor. "Don't stare at it," Diane hissed, grabbing my arm. "And don't, under any circumstances, walk down there right now." But how is this possible? My voice sounded small even to my own ears. "The store changes at night," she said, her eyes never leaving the shelf she was stocking. "It expands in ways that don't make sense. Don't think about it too much. Just follow the rules." A hollow laugh escaped my throat. "This is insane. I'm calling bullshit on all of this." Diane's grip tightened on my arm. Believe what you want. Just follow the rules if you want to see daylight again." The conviction in her voice silenced my skepticism. We continued working, and I deliberately kept my eyes away from the distorted end of the aisle. After about 20 minutes, I risked another glance. The aisle had returned to its normal dimensions. "It's fixed," I whispered. Diane nodded. "For now." The rest of our shift in dry goods proceeded without incident, though I noticed how Diane's eyes constantly scanned our surroundings, how she checked her watch obsessively, how she flinched at every unexpected sound. At 12:58 a.m., she looked at her watch and stiffened. "Almost 1 a.m., she said. "From now on, we work in pairs, Rule 3. "Except in the garden center," I added, recalling the rule. "We're not going to the garden center," she said firmly. "Not tonight. Not ever if you're smart." "What's in the garden center?" Diane's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a naked fear there. Something that prefers to meet new employees one at a time. The digital clock on the wall ticked over to 1:01 a.m. Something subtle changed in the atmosphere of the store. The background hum of the refrigeration units seemed to drop an octave lower. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a new intensity, like angry wasps trapped in glass jars. "Let's move to housewares," Diane said, her voice tight. "We need to finish those bedding sets before—" The distinct squeak of a shopping cart cut through the store's ambient noise. Both of us froze. "Tell me that's one of the other stalkers," I whispered. Diane shook her head almost imperceptibly, reaching slowly for her walkie-talkie. "Rule 6, she breathed. "If you see a customer after 1 a.m., notify a manager immediately. Do not approach them yourself." We peered down the main aisle. About 50 feet away, a woman in a faded blue bathrobe pushed a shopping cart with one squeaky wheel. Her gray hair hung in limp strands around a face lined with age. From this distance, she looked like someone's grandmother who had somehow wandered into the store after closing. "Lloyd," Diane whispered into her walkie-talkie. "Customer in grocery, near aisle 9. After hours." The radio crackled with static before Lloyd's voice came through, unnaturally calm. "Stay where you are. Do not engage. I'm on my way." The woman turned her cart in our direction. Something about her movements seemed off, too fluid, almost gliding, despite her apparent age. "Should we hide?" I asked, already backing away. "No," Diane warned. "Don't move suddenly, don't run. She'll notice." "She'll notice? What does that—" "Excuse me," called the elderly woman, her voice carrying easily across the distance between us. "Could you help me find the canned peaches? I can't seem to locate them." Every instinct told me to respond, to help this harmless-looking old lady. I even took half a step forward before Diane's iron grip closed around my wrist. "Don't," she hissed. "Look at her eyes." I squinted, focusing on the woman's face as she drew closer. Her cart squeaked rhythmically with each step. 20 feet away now, close enough to see that her eyes weren't eyes at all, just smooth, uninterrupted skin where eyes should have been. My breath caught in my throat. The woman's head tilted, as if listening for my reaction. "I know you're there," she called, her voice suddenly overlapping with itself, like multiple recordings played simultaneously. It's rude to ignore an old woman who only needs a little help. My legs trembled with the instinct to flee, but Diane's warning kept me rooted in place. The eyeless woman pushed her cart closer. 15 feet now. "Last chance to help," she said, her mouth stretching into a smile that was far too wide, revealing teeth that seemed to rotate slowly in her gums like carousel horses. "I'm feeling rather hungry tonight." A loud crash echoed from the far end of the store. The woman's head snapped toward the sound, her ear-to-ear smile vanishing. Lloyd appeared from behind us, carrying what looked like a metal toolbox. "Ma'am," he called out firmly, "we've closed for the night. I'm afraid I'll have to escort you out." The woman turned back toward us, her face now a mask of fury. The skin where her eyes should have been bulged outward, pulsing. "This establishment used to be more accommodating," she snarled, her voice dropping impossibly low. "There was a time when night staff knew proper manners." Lloyd stepped forward, positioning himself between us and the eyeless woman. He set the metal box on the ground and flipped its latches. "By the old agreement, you have no right to be here," Lloyd stated, his voice carrying a strange, formal quality. "The night hours belong to your kind only by invitation." The woman hissed, a sound like steam escaping a pressure valve. "The agreements change with time, little manager. Your predecessors understood this." Lloyd opened the metal box and removed something I couldn't see from my angle. "Last warning. Leave the premises and take your hunger elsewhere." For a moment, the woman stood completely still. Then, so quickly I almost missed it, her neck extended several inches, stretching unnaturally as her head thrust forward. She sniffed the air loudly, her attention seemingly focused on me. "New blood," she whispered, her voice suddenly childlike. "Fresh meat. Does he know what he's signed up for, I wonder?" Lloyd raised whatever he was holding. I caught a glimpse of something crystalline that refracted the store's lighting into painful shards of color. The eyeless woman recoiled. Her shopping cart rolled backward, though she hadn't touched it. "This isn't over," she said, her multiple voice effect intensifying until it sounded like a chorus of different people speaking through her mouth. "The barriers weaken. The doors open wider each night. Your rules won't protect you forever." With that, she turned and pushed her cart rapidly toward the garden center, moving with impossible speed. Within seconds, she had vanished around a corner. Lloyd's shoulders sagged. He returned the crystal object to his metal box and secured the latches. "Is she gone?" Diane asked, finally releasing my wrist. "For tonight," Lloyd confirmed. "She can't return until tomorrow at the earliest." I struggled to form words, my mind reeling from what I'd just witnessed. "What? Who was that?" Lloyd regarded me with tired eyes. "That's why we have Rule 6. Still think these are joke rules?" My mouth felt desert dry. What would have happened if I'd approached her? Diane and Lloyd exchanged looks. "Remember Ted from Sporting Goods?" Diane asked Lloyd. "Hard to forget," he responded grimly. "Had to explain to corporate why we found nothing but his name tag and left shoe." My stomach lurched. "You're saying that thing ate someone?" "Ate isn't quite the right word," Lloyd said, checking his watch. "It's 1:27 a.m. We've wasted enough time. Diane, take him to Housewares like you planned. Stay together." As Lloyd walked away with his mysterious metal box, I turned to Diane. "This can't be real. That woman... It had to be some kind of prank, right? Special effects or something?" Diane's expression remained deadly serious. "Want to know why I respect Rule 7? Why I'm missing a finger?" She flexed her main hand. "Because the things that hide in the two long aisles are distant cousins to what you just saw. They're hungry, too." She started walking toward Housewares, clearly expecting me to follow. "You have a choice, Marcus," she called over her shoulder. "Believe or don't believe, but follow the rules either way if you want to make it to morning." I glanced back at where the eyeless woman had disappeared, then hurried after Diane, suddenly very aware of how many dark, quiet corners the massive store contained, and how many hours remained until daylight. Diane and I worked in tense silence for the next half hour, methodically stocking pillowcases and comforter sets in the housewares department. My hands trembled slightly as I arranged items on shelves, my mind replaying the encounter with the eyeless woman. Every unexpected sound made me flinch. "You get used to it," Diane said, noticing my jumpiness. "First night's the hardest." "How is any of this possible?" I whispered. "Those things shouldn't exist." Diane shrugged. "This store sits on what Lloyd calls a thin spot, the barrier between our world and somewhere else. It's weaker here. Been this way since they built the place in '97. As if on cue, all the overhead lights dimmed momentarily, then brightened again. Is that normal? Depends on your definition of normal, Diane replied. She checked her watch. 2:14 a.m. We should finish this section soon. A crackling sound came from the store's ancient PA system. Static hissed through the speakers, followed by a pop and a click. Then, music began to play. It wasn't the usual Walmart music. This was a delicate melody played on what sounded like a music box. A simple, childlike tune that somehow felt profoundly wrong. The notes were slightly off-key, the timing irregular in ways that made my skin crawl. Diane dropped the sheet set she was holding. Break room. Now. Her voice held barely controlled panic. What? Rule 4, she snapped, already moving. If the PA system plays music between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., proceed immediately to the break room until it stops. Do not hum along. The tinkling melody continued as we hurried through the store. I noticed Diane had her hands pressed firmly over her ears. Should I cover my ears too? I asked, struggling to keep up with her. If you can resist humming, you're fine. I can't take that chance. As we rushed past the electronics department, I saw other night staff similarly hurrying toward the break room. A stocky guy with a beard was practically dragging a younger employee who seemed to be swaying to the music. Carlos, he's humming, someone shouted. Shut him up. Carlos clamped a hand over the younger man's mouth, but it was too late. The young employee's eyes had taken on a glazed, distant look. His body moved in rhythm with the discordant melody, steps becoming more fluid and unnatural with each passing second. Leave him, Lloyd's voice commanded from somewhere ahead. Get to the break room. Carlos hesitated, then released his grip on the humming employee and ran toward us. The abandoned man began to dance, a jerky puppet-like movement that bent his limbs at impossible angles. His humming grew louder, harmonizing perfectly with the music box tune. We reached the break room, and Lloyd frantically waved us inside. Quickly! As Diane and I rushed through the door, I glanced back. The humming employee was now floating several inches above the floor, his body contorting grotesquely as the music swelled. Lloyd slammed the break room door shut behind us and turned a key in the lock. The room contained 5 other employees, all looking terrified. The music was still audible but muffled through the walls. What happens to him? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. If we're lucky, he'll still be here when the music stops, Lloyd answered grimly. If not, he gestured helplessly. We sat in tense silence for 17 excruciating minutes as the twisted melody played on. When it finally stopped, Lloyd cautiously opened the door. The employee who had been humming lay crumpled on the floor about 30 feet away, unconscious but breathing. His name tag read Kevin. He's still here, Carlos said, relief evident in his voice. This time, Lloyd muttered. He turned to me, his expression hard. Still think the rules are a joke? I could only shake my head, my entire understanding of reality crumbling around me. After the music incident, Diane and I were assigned to stock the frozen food section. Kevin had been moved to the manager's office, still unconscious but stable. Lloyd assured everyone he would likely recover, though he mentioned something about residual effects that no one seemed willing to explain further. Stick close to me and frozen, Diane instructed as we pushed our cart of frost-covered boxes toward the back of the store. Rule 11 applies there. I recalled the rule about reflections in the freezer doors that didn't match the room. My stomach tightened at the thought. The frozen food section was eerily quiet, the only sound being the steady hum of the freezer units. The fluorescent lights seemed dimmer here, creating pockets of shadow between the aisles. We'll start with the ice cream, Diane said, handing me a box of popsicles. Remember, don't stare at reflections in the doors. I nodded, focusing intently on the products as I arranged them in the freezer case. Despite my best efforts, my eyes kept drifting to the glass doors. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just my own reflection and Diane's as we worked. Then, as I reached to place a carton of ice cream on a shelf, I noticed something odd in the reflection. Though Diane stood next to me in reality, her reflection was several feet away in the freezer door, opening a completely different door than the one she was actually accessing. My breath caught. "Diane, don't look at it," she warned without turning. "Whatever you see, it isn't real. Or rather, it's real somewhere else." I tried to focus on my task, but the discrepancy between reality and reflection grew more pronounced. In the glass, shadows moved behind our reflections, tall, elongated figures that didn't exist in the actual store. My reflection's movements began lagging behind my own by several seconds. "What are those things?" I whispered, unable to stop myself from looking. "Echoes," Diane answered tersely. "From the other side. Looking at them too long draws their attention." As if hearing her, my reflection suddenly stopped moving independently of me. It turned its head slowly, looking directly out of the freezer door glass, looking at me. Its eyes were black pools, its smile too wide for my face. "Diane," I hissed, backing away. "My reflection is—" "Don't run," she warned. "That makes it worse." My reflection placed its hand against the glass from inside, its fingers elongating until they resembled claws. Its mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. "Turn around now," Diane commanded. "Face the opposite freezer, and don't look back until I say so." I obeyed, my heart thundering in my chest. In the reflection of the opposite freezer door, I could see what was happening behind me. My distorted reflection was pushing against the glass, the surface bulging outward like a membrane. "Diane, it's coming through." "Keep still," she ordered, reaching slowly into her vest pocket. She withdrew what looked like a small salt shaker and unscrewed the cap. In the reflection, I watched her fling a handful of white granules at the freezer door, where my twisted reflection was emerging. A high-pitched wail cut through the air as the substance made contact with the glass. The bulging door snapped back to normal, the distorted reflection of myself dissolving like smoke. "Iron filings mixed with salt," Diane explained, returning the shaker to her pocket. "They hate it." My legs felt weak as the adrenaline drained from my system. "That thing, it was trying to replace me?" "Not exactly. More like, wear you from the inside out." Diane reopened the freezer door cautiously and continued stalking. "Happened to a guy last year. His reflection got out while he was working alone." "What happened to him?" Diane's face darkened. "They found him 2 days later in the parking lot. He was still walking and talking, but—" She shuddered. "His insides were gone, just hollow, like a suit someone was wearing." I stared at the freezer doors, now showing only normal reflections again. "How do you keep working here knowing all this?" "Double the pay of day shift," Diane said matter-of-factly. "And Lloyd's good at keeping us alive if we follow the rules." She checked her watch. 3:10 a.m. Let's finish this section quickly. It's almost bathroom time. I remembered Rule 8. The employee restroom near electronics is off limits between 3:13 a.m. and 3:27 a.m. "What happens in the bathroom during those times?" I asked, dreading the answer. Diane pointed to her missing finger. "That didn't happen on a shelf. Made it inside with 3 seconds to spare. Door caught my finger as it closed." "The door closed on its own?" "Something wanted in," she said simply. My finger was the price of being slow. After finishing in frozen foods, our shift took us to the toy department. The store seemed to have settled into an uneasy quiet after the earlier incidents. Even the lights had stabilized, casting a steady, if sickly glow over the aisles of dolls and action figures. "This section's usually safe," Diane said as we unpacked boxes of board games. "The things that come at night don't seem interested in toys." "Small mercies," I muttered, trying to ignore how the eyes of the dolls seemed to follow our movements. Just my imagination working overtime after everything I'd witnessed. As we worked, I became aware of a sound gradually growing louder, a whistled tune echoing from somewhere in the store. The melody was jaunty, almost cheerful, like someone whistling while they worked. Under normal circumstances, it would have been unremarkable. But I remembered Rule 13. Never, under any circumstances, acknowledge the night janitor who whistles. He is not an employee. "Diane," I whispered, not looking up from the shelf I was stocking. "I hear it," she responded, her voice tight. "Keep working. Don't look for the source." The whistling grew louder, coming from the main aisle that ran alongside toys. Along with the tune came the squeak of wheels, like a janitor's cart being pushed slowly along the polished floor. Every instinct screamed at me to look, to see what kind of entity could cause such fear among the night staff. I forced myself to continue arranging board games, though my hands had begun to shake. The squeaking wheels stopped at the end of our aisle. The whistling continued, but now it remained stationary. I could feel a presence watching us. "It's right there, isn't it?" I whispered, keeping my eyes fixed on the shelf before me. "Don't look," Diane warned. "Whatever you do, don't acknowledge it." The whistling changed tune, becoming a distorted version of "Pop Goes the Weasel," played at an unnaturally slow tempo. Then, a voice spoke, a rasping, wet sound that hardly seemed human. "Floor's looking a bit dirty over there," it said, the words bubbling as if spoken through liquid. "Might need a mop." My skin crawled at the sound. From the corner of my eye, I caught glimpses of a figure in what might have been a gray uniform. Something about its proportions seemed wrong, too tall and thin to be human. "Excuse me," the voice gurgled again, closer now. "I said the floor's dirty. Don't you hear me, boy?" Sweat beaded on my forehead as I fought the urge to respond or look directly at the speaker. Diane had gone completely rigid beside me, her knuckles white as she gripped a box of Monopoly. "It's rude to ignore someone speaking to you," the voice boomed suddenly, all pretense of humanity gone. The sound reverberated through the store, followed by the violent rattling of the janitor's cart. I nearly jumped out of my skin, but Diane's hand shot out, gripping my wrist painfully. "Don't!" she hissed. For several agonizing seconds, the presence remained at the end of our aisle. I could hear a sound like water dripping steadily onto the floor. The air temperature plummeted until I could see my breath forming clouds before my face. Then, abruptly, the whistling resumed. The squeaking wheels started moving again, the sounds gradually receding as whatever posed as the night janitor continued its rounds. Only when the whistling had faded completely did Diane release my wrist. "That was close," she breathed. "It doesn't usually speak to new people on their first night." "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Something old. Something that was here long before the store." Diane returned to stocking shelves with trembling hands. "Lloyd says it was trapped when they built this place. The whistling is its way of hunting." "Hunting for what?" "People who break Rule 13. She glanced at me grimly. "Last year, a new guy thought the rule was stupid, turned around and asked the janitor for directions to receive in. What happened to him? They never found enough to bury." 4 hours down, 4 to go, Diane said, checking her watch as we finished in the toy department. "You're doing well for a first-nighter. Most don't make it this far without breaking at least one rule." I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or merely an observation. My nerves were frayed, every shadow a potential threat. The store no longer felt like a simple retail space, but a living entity with malicious intent. Lloyd's voice crackled over our walkie-talkies. "Need someone in sporting goods. Inventory delivery just arrived. "We'll take it," Diane responded, already heading in that direction. Better than electronics right now. We cut through housewares on our way to sporting goods, passing the bedding section we'd stopped earlier. As we rounded the corner near seasonal items, Diane stopped so abruptly I nearly collided with her. "Don't move," she whispered. In the open area ahead, where garden furniture would be displayed in summer, 8 shopping carts stood arranged in a perfect circle. They faced inward, like some bizarre metallic Stonehenge. The space inside the circle appeared darker than it should have been, as if the fluorescent lights couldn't quite penetrate that area. I remembered Rule 10. Should you encounter shopping carts arranged in a circle, do not disturb them and notify management. "I'm calling Lloyd," Diane said quietly, reaching for her walkie-talkie. Before she could press the talk button, a soft sound emanated from within the cart circle, a child's laughter, light and innocent. A small red ball rolled out from the darkened center, coming to rest at my feet. "Don't touch it," Diane warned, her voice tight with fear. The laughter came again, closer now. "Can I have my ball back, mister?" A young voice called from the darkness between the carts. "Please? I just want to play." Every protective instinct in my body urged me to help the child. I found myself reaching for the ball before I could stop myself. Diane slapped my hand away. "That's not a child," she hissed, backing us both away slowly. "But it sounds like whatever will make you cross that circle." She raised her walkie-talkie. "Lloyd, cart circle in seasonal, requesting immediate assistance." The voice from the darkness changed, becoming multiple children speaking in unison. "Don't you want to play with us? Everyone wants to play. Everyone joins the circle eventually." The shopping carts began to vibrate, rattling against the floor. The darkness within the circle deepened, seeming to pulse like a living thing. "Please, mister," the voices called, no longer sounding childlike at all, but distorted and hungry. "Just roll the ball back. Just step inside. We're so lonely." Lloyd appeared beside us, carrying the same metal toolbox I'd seen earlier. "Stand back," he ordered, opening the box and removing what looked like a handful of small river stones marked with red symbols. The cart circle began to rotate slowly on its own, the metal constructs grinding against the floor. The darkness inside swirled like a whirlpool, and multiple pairs of gleaming eyes blinked open within it. "Come play with us!" the voices roared, all pretense of childlike innocence gone. Lloyd began tossing the marked stones into the circle one by one, chanting something under his breath. With each stone that vanished into the darkness, the carts slowed their rotation. The voices shrieked in what sounded like pain. The final stone caused a concussive wave that knocked us backward. When we recovered, the carts stood motionless again, the darkness between them merely normal shadow. "What was that?" I gasped, helping Diane to her feet. "A doorway," Lloyd said grimly, collecting the now empty shopping carts. "They appear randomly, usually after midnight. Binding stones close them temporarily. What would have happened if I'd... Don't ask questions you don't want answers to," Lloyd cut me off. "Just be grateful you followed Rule 10. As Lloyd wheeled away the carts, I noticed something on the floor where the circle had been. Small, wet footprints that evaporated before my eyes, leaving scorch marks on the linoleum. I've been working the night shift at Walmart for 3 months now. The rules are second nature to me at this point, embedded in my consciousness like survival instincts. I no longer question their necessity or origin. I simply follow them, and I live to see another dawn. That first night changed me. The world I thought I knew was a comfortable illusion, a thin veneer over something darker and more complex. Sometimes I envy people who get to live in that illusion, who never have to learn what really lurks in the shadows of a 24-hour superstore at 3 a.m. Lloyd eventually explained more about our store's unique situation. Built on the site of an old crossroads, where, according to local legend, people once made deals with entities they couldn't possibly understand. The massive building, with its labyrinthine aisles and constant electrical hum, acts as both beacon and barrier, attracting things from elsewhere, while also, paradoxically, keeping them contained. The rules evolved over time, he told me during a rare quiet moment. Each one written in blood and necessity, each one a lesson learned the hard way. Diane has become something of a mentor to me. Her pragmatic approach to our supernatural workplace somehow makes the horrors manageable. Fear is fine, she often says. Panic is what gets you killed. Kevin never fully recovered from his encounter with the music. He still works nights, but sometimes he hums that twisted melody under his breath, unaware he's doing it. On those nights, Lloyd confines him to the break room until the episode passes. The pay is good. Hazard compensation, Lloyd calls it with a grim smile. Enough to cover my rent, my medical bills, and still have some left over. In this economy, walking away from that isn't an option, even if walking away were possible. Lloyd hinted once that leaving might not be as simple as putting in 2 weeks' notice. The things that hunt us at night have long memories. New hires come and go. The ones who scoff at the rules rarely last a week. I've taken to training them myself, emphasizing the importance of each rule, hoping to minimize casualties. Tonight, as I clock in at 9:54 p.m., never at 10, a young woman with nervous eyes waits by the time clock. Lloyd introduces her as Jamie, our newest night stalker. Marcus will show you the ropes, he tells her, handing her the familiar sheet of rules. She skims it quickly, a smirk forming on her face. Is this for real? I meet her skeptical gaze with a steady one of my own, remembering how I felt on my first night. Read them carefully, I tell her as the overhead lights flicker once in warning. Memorize them. Your life depends on it. As we walk onto the sales floor, the store's automatic doors lock behind us with a final sounding click. The night has begun.